Hi there. Welcome to another exciting edition of me reading my stuff. Yay! Today I'm going to be reading a wonderful story called Vorbliss. No, I don't have a speech impediment. That's the actual title of it. It was released originally in online for a little while. It was the very first story I ever submitted to anyone. It got me a 2-page rejection letter from Bewildering Stories, which finished with, "Okay, we laughed at everything. Can you send us something else without 47 F-bombs in it?" So I did, and the other story called "And the Beat Goes Fut" got printed. So hooray me, that was the beginning of the McSci-Fi career. Vorbliss is a story of a couple of space traders. It's told all in first person, all to a recording device. It has a lot of profanity in it. But the section I'm going to read to you, because it's being dictated to a nun, doesn't have any of those nasty little F-bombs in it, so it'll be fun. It's a section, like I said, it's in Sci-Fi Lampoon magazine. It was in the very first edition. If you go to BillMcSci-Fi.com, click on it. You can buy it right here online. It's fun. I used to have copies here in the house, but they sold out, and thanks to the pandemic, I'm not restocking just yet. But you can still buy them, and, life goes on. It's really cool. So here we go. Vorbliss, the middle of it. Special entry to be copied to Sister Agnes, Assistant Prioress, Our Lady of Christ's Mercy, Osbankin City, Cosnor. Thanks to the computer for knowing all that. Before I can talk about Vorbliss, I need to fill in some of the gaps in the history of the disease. Given what I was endured and what I was told by the medicos and later read, I can at least give a layman's perspective to the whole thing. While there were epidemics that precede this, the date that is most important is November 15th, 1532, on the Old Earth Gregorian calendar. Just under 200 Spanish conquistadors arrived in the holy city of Cachemira, right in the heart of the Incan Empire. They were exhausted, outnumbered, and scared, word substitution stiff. Just ahead of them were camped approximately 80,000 Incan warriors and the entourage of the emperor himself. Yet, within just 24 hours, more than 7,000 Incan warriors lie slaughtered by the Spanish guns, weapons that were unheard of to the Incans. Within a few months after that, almost 95% of the Incans lay dead. Those unfortunates were killed by a disease, most likely smallpox carried by one of the Spanish slaves. It wasn't until much later, in 1796, that Dr. Edward Jenner created a first viable smallpox vaccine. He based it on his study of milkmaids, which is as fine a way to make an important scientific discovery as any I know. But people had to wait to 1860 for Louis Pasteur to discover that bacteria cause diseases. He called the bacteria germs. To prevent people from being harmed by these germs, he invented a process that got called pasteurization. However, while it worked on beer and wine, the important stuff he was interested in, and later worked on milk, it was not such a great method for treating people. See, it turns out that heating people up to 135 degrees centigrade is not very good for their health, no matter the motive. Their flesh separates from their bones, their organs explode, and basically they die horrid deaths. A result that would seem to blatantly contradict the whole word substitution idea of keeping them healthy. I'm getting too picky in here, so I'm going to jump forward. Over the next 100 years, drugs were invented that did a good job of pasteurization without the lethal side effects. Ta-da! All right, there we go. A couple of centuries after that, humans discovered the hyperjump and began exploring the galaxy. A consequence of that was that they began running into alien races. As fate would have it, most civilized worlds had similar horror stories of contamination in their histories, and the ones who didn't grasped the concepts quickly enough. So, for 50 years after the first contact, a species would only meet Earthlings via electronic transmission or in sealed, heavily guarded rooms where they would wear complete hazmat suits. As historians have noted, this was not helpful for interpersonal relations. Most forms of trade were clearly out of the question. Who would buy something that could possibly wipe out an entire race? Then Dr. Selina Farik-Leibowitz, a xenobiologist with a rebellious streak, stated that all the fear and precautions were stupid. To prove her point, she surprised Dr. Isnik on Xanthos late one night while wearing nothing but her regular clothes. He, of course, was sleeping when she arrived, so he had no chance to get into any protective gear. For 20 days and nights they stayed locked in his house. His family terrified, his pets skittish, and then it slowly began to dawn on him and his family and their pets, and the military blockade that surrounded them at this point, that nothing bad was happening. In fact, everyone seemed to be in perfect health. Dr. Farik Leibowitz explained her theory of incompatible blood to the waiting throngs. It seems that on Earth, all blood is iron-based. That makes sense, since the planet has a molten iron core. Iron permeates everything humans eat, from vegetables to meat, and people even take iron supplements to make their blood stronger. But on Xanthos, the primary metal that infuses the natives' bloods is nickel. Nickel in the food, nickel supplements, you get the idea. Germs that thrived in a nickel-based blood simply died in an iron-rich blood. They literally starved to death. Since most of the planets had different base metals running through their veins, the chance for infection was nearly nil. A broad-spectrum antibiotic and some simple precautions were all you really needed. As time has gone on, she has obviously been proved right. Throughout billions of interspecies contacts, there have only been 5 recorded cases of true cross-contamination, and all of those were cured without fatalities. I don't know why this part interests me, but it does. After winning the Nobel Prize for Medicine, she divorced her husband, moved to Kanasada, and began a successful career as a lounge singer. Anyway, back on point here. As every school kid knows, nature abhors a vacuum. About 150 years later, nature filled the infectious void. Boy, did it, word substitution, ever. The first case of Vorbliss was reported on Slaminia Prime. A merchant group from Wanahu was meeting there to discuss the possibility of trading for various foodstuffs. One merchant felt feverish and went to the local infirmary. Despite the prescribed treatments, the second day his eyes swelled out of their sockets, and his body temperature spiked by 35%. By the third day, his body had bloated to 200% of its original size, and he was in excruciating pain. The fourth day saw him saddled with random bouts of paralysis and delusions of extreme happiness. On the fifth day, he fell into a vegetative coma and never recovered. Within 10 days of his first symptoms being spotted, the entire Wanahu delegation lay comatose, except for one member who managed to kill himself during the stage 4. As you might imagine, this whole affair caused some concern. Over the next decade, another 93 instances were recorded. A total of 13,457 beings were in comas. Another 497 managed to kill themselves, all in stage 4. They all had only one commonality. The infected were always the visiting aliens and never the hosts. The galactic medicos were going insane. A cure had to be found. Trade was dropping. Economies were tanking. And people were, justifiably, if you ask me, panicking to the point of violence. It was on Fresnar 7, now known as the Nerd Planet, the answer was found. The Vesnarians named the disease Vorbliss after an ancient phrase of theirs, which means stalking death. They discovered that the prions, nature's most ancient form of protein, were universal in one form or another to all beings. As immune systems adapted to the various threats of intergalactic germs, they left a path wide open for prions to mutate and wreak havoc, which is exactly what they did. Since it was the prions of one race that would be infected first, all the members of that race would succumb. The other race would be spared, seeing as how the species on the home planet had immune systems which were not overly stimulated, and to avoid more intergalactic disease, they remained immune to Vorbliss. Hooray, said the galactic medicos. Now if there was only a cure. The Fresnian scientists were aghast. A cure? Is that all you wanted? We had that months ago. We thought you wanted to know the cool stuff. Thus, Nerd Planet. Okay, it's in Vorbliss. That's the name of the story, Vorbliss. You can find it at BillMcSci-Fi.com. It's in the debut issue of Sci-Fi Lampoon. It's a lot of fun, great art. Don't just buy it from me. Buy it because there's some amazing talent in there. Just every author in there is just above and beyond. Like, whoa, that one's good. No, that one's better. No, this one's better too. It keeps going. It's great. And you'll be laughing a lot. So, Vorbliss, BillMcSci-Fi.com. Hit me up. Talk to you next week. Bye.